Good morning, guys. I am sorry I can't be there today, and you get a recording of myself today. Um, yeah, I'm kind of bummed out. I can't be at school. I did test positive for COVID, but as you can see, I'm okay. I'm asymptomatic. Don't have a cough or runny nose or fever. So I guess my vaccines are working, which is great. But because I tested positive, I can't be on campus because I don't want to pass it on to anyone. So hopefully I'll be there by Friday. If not, then I will see you on Monday. Okay. With that said, we're going to go ahead and continue with our lessons. I know on Monday you guys saw the video, the documentary on Dorothea Lange. She's our artist for this next section that we're going to be doing. We're going to be focusing on photography. You learned a little bit about her already. So we're going to go ahead and learn a little bit more together. Okay. Dorothea Lange, photojournalist. And like always, when we do these together, we're taking notes. So make sure that you're taking notes to upload into Classroom afterwards. Okay, perfect. Let's go ahead and get started. Dorothea Lange, who was she? You should know a little bit about her now, but let's learn a little bit more. Dorothea Lange was an influential American documentary photographer and photojournalist. So I did pick a female and I did pick an American artist. So that's kind of cool. I did want to make sure that you get a little bit of a plethora here and there. So this week's artist is American and a female. Okay. She was best known for her Depression era work. She took a lot of pictures during this time period. I don't know about you and your history books. I don't know if you've seen some of her pictures in your history books, but when I was younger, I actually, in my own history books, I did get to see some of her famous pictures. They've been used a lot to describe this time period. Yeah, she did some amazing work that kind of humanizes that tragic consequence of the Great Depression. She was really influential in the photography world, and so she gave off a lot of influence, and so a lot of people followed in her footsteps, which is awesome because, again, in her time period, there wasn't a lot of female photographers, so it was really great to see. Um, yeah, to see her come out and flourish in that. Okay. Dorothea, she was born as a second generation German immigrant. So her parents were immigrants, or her grandparents were immigrants. Okay. So she has that immigration background, which is also, again, kind of cool. She was born on May 26th, 1895, in Hoboken, New Jersey. So she's a Jersey girl. Dorothea was born with a different last name, though. Okay. She was born with a different last name, and you can see it there, Dorothea Margareta Nutzhorn, I believe it's how you say it, but I'm not sure. Don't quote me on that. That was the name that was given to her at birth, but later on, because her father ended up abandoning her father left their family around 12 years old. And so she decided, and her mom decided, that she would go ahead and drop her name and she would just become Dorothea Lange. Okay. So she dropped her middle name and assumed her mother's maiden name after her father abandoned the family when she was 12 years old. And this was one of the traumatic incidents in her early life. And like always, we will have a quiz on Friday. So we're making sure that we're taking notes, right? Take great notes because then you'll be able to use your notes for your quiz. And this would be a really great quiz question. There was two traumatic events in her early life. One of them being that her father left, and the second one being that she contracted polio. Okay, vaccines are really important. I'm proof of it because, hey, I tested positive, but I have no symptoms, meaning that my vaccines and my boosters are working. Thank you, Lord. But yeah, polio. We actually vaccinate kids now for polio. Um, but at the age of 7, she ended up contracting polio, which reminds us of another artist. If you know who Frida Kahlo is, we'll be talking about her too eventually. But if you were in my art class last year, I think we talked about Frida Kahlo. But Frida Kahlo also had polio at the age of 7, at a young age, which kind of stops the growth of bones. Okay. And so for Dorothea, it actually weakened her left leg or her right leg, which left her with a permanent limp. And that actually happened to Frida Kahlo as well. Super crazy. Two great artists, same disease, kind of the same um, permanent limp. Okay. So Dorothea contracted polio at the age of 7, which left her with a permanent limp. Did this deteriorate her from being awesome? No, it actually taught her. We can see her quote right here in the bottom. It informed me, guided me, instructed me, it helped me, it humiliated me. Lang once said on her altered gait, and never got over it, and I'm aware of the force and the power of it. So she was always aware of her disability. She was always aware of her leg and the way that she walked and the way that she looked, but it didn't stop her. It actually guided her and instructed her, and it helped her and made her feel and reminded her that she's human. And as she would go out and see other people with disabilities or who were also suffering during the Great Depression, this guided her. So knowing and suffering herself was a sense of strength for her. Okay, which is really important for us to learn that, hey, we can use our own personal disabilities to kind of guide us and lift us up in our lives. Okay. So, two traumatic incidents. Dad left, and she contracted polio, leaving her with a permanent limp for the rest of her life. Okay, cool. Great quiz question. Bay Area girl. Yes, she was born in Jersey. Okay, but as she grew up, Lang was educated in photography in New York. She was influenced by other really great photographers, and she took a lot of awesome classes. She was educated, which was really cool. Again, not a lot of women during this time period were educated, but she went to school. She got taught. She became a great photographer. She was informally an apprentice for several New York photography studios, including one famed Arnold Genthy, which was another famous photographer. We're not going to focus on him. We want to focus on our Bay Area girl. In 1918, Lang decided to move to San Francisco. Whoop, whoop. And by the following year, she opened her own successful portrait studios. So before she started her Great Depression pictures, she had her own portrait studios where people would come in and take their pictures of their kids, of their families. People would love to take their portrait pictures. This is before we had our phones and we had our selfies, where we can just take our portrait pictures that way. Okay, so in 1918, she moved to San Francisco, successful portrait studio. Okay, she lived across the bay in Berkeley for the rest of her life. So she never left California. She came here, stayed in San Francisco, moved to Berkeley for the rest of her life. And in 1920, she ended up getting married to her first husband. She ended up getting divorced later on and getting remarried again, but we're not going to focus on that either. Um, yes, so she did get married, and she had two beautiful sons, and you can actually see them right here. Look at those cute little faces. Okay, girl, boy, mom. Yeah, I'm gonna be a boy mom soon too. So this is kind of cute for me. Anyways, portrait studio. She had two boys. She was a Bay Area girl. So you have to remember that she moved here. Okay. So it's important when we start talking about the Great Depression that you understand that her life was here in California and not in New York anymore. Okay. From the studios to the streets. With the onset of the Great Depression, Lang turned her camera lens from the studios to the streets. So, as the Great Depression started, and I don't know if you remember a lot of about history or if you've studied this in history, but when the Great Depression started, with the crash of the stock market, with the Dust Bowl, people are not having jobs anymore. This is after 1920s. We have the Roaring 20s, but after the 20s, we have the Great Depression, okay, where stock market crashes, we see the dust bowls, people have no jobs, they have no money. There's an inflation of money that goes up where money has no worth. So it's a really, really hard time for people during this time period. So if you've lost your money and you've lost your job, do you think people would want to get their portraits done during this time period? Probably not. So unfortunately, Lang lost a lot of customers. She herself was kind of struggling with her job and stuff. Um, but she decided to do something different. She decided to go ahead and take her camera. She did have her equipment, so she took her camera with her. And instead of staying inside in the studio, she went ahead and she went out into the streets. Her studies with the unemployment and for homeless people. Again, remember, she lives in California, and not just California. She lives in Berkeley, San Francisco area. Lots of homeless people there, even till this day. So her studies of unemployment and homeless people captured the attention of other photographers. So she took lots of pictures, and she would send them to the newspapers where people will go ahead and print her pictures on the newspaper. And other photographers were kind of interested in her, but not just other photographers, but a company was actually really interested in her. And it wasn't just any company, it was the government company. And so this is where we get the Federal Resettlement Administration, which we call RA. Later on, it gets called Farm Security Administration, FSA. So these were federal companies, federal um, yeah, companies that would want to help people who were unemployed, who had lost their farms, who had no money. They were trying to help people. So they saw her pictures and they wanted her to start working with them. Doing what? Taking pictures. From 1935 to 1939, Lang's work with the RA and FSA brought the plight of the poor and forgotten, particularly sharecroppers, displaced farm families, migrant workers. She went around and took pictures and took pictures and took pictures. She would go from LA all the way down or up. Um, LA all the way up to like Santa Rosa and Modesto area, and she would just take pictures as she would drive by. Okay. Again, her pictures would be they would go into the newspaper. They would be distributed not just here in California, but all around the country. Her pictures would be sent out. Okay. We see a picture right here. Look at this man. I want you to notice how these people are dressed. Okay, these are farmers, maybe unemployed, maybe homeless, but hey, they're still wearing their suits. But you can tell these are tired, worn down people who are just struggling to live. This became White Angel Bloodline. This is the title of this picture right here. This picture actually became her first very iconic picture. Okay, so for her first iconic picture, White Angel Bloodline. Her photographic studies of unemployment and homeless started with White Angel Bloodline in 1933, which depicted a lone man. We see this lonely guy right over here. He's facing away from the crowd in front of a soup kitchen, not chicken, run by a widow known as the White Angel. So during the Depression era, Of course, people they don't have jobs, don't have homes, they're migrating, they're trying to survive. Um, but just like when there's things like that, there's also help. And I'm sure that some of you have actually gone during this time period during the pandemic. Since 2022, a lot of our churches have started this as well, where we've done food drives. And a lot of you guys have gone and helped, and that's wonderful. And I'm so proud of you guys for doing this. Um, but yeah, we have a lady here who was a widow. Okay, she's not shown in this picture, but this lady was a widow. She would go ahead and run the soup kitchen from her own kitchen. Okay, so she would make soups every day, and she would make it with money that was just donated to her. Okay, and she would feed hundreds of men that would come, who were hungry and unemployed and trying to get food. As we look at this picture, we do see our lonely man. I wish you could tell me what you see, but go ahead and observe it and think about what you see. And wonder, why is he facing the other direction? Do you think maybe he's too back of the line and he might not get any food? Maybe he already knows that. Maybe he's just hungry. Maybe he's having a bad day. I don't know. But yes, this became one of her most iconic pictures, White Angel Bread Line, named after the widow who ran that bread line. Um, and you can see all of those men just waiting to get some food, just a little bit of food. Okay, here are some other pictures that followed during this time period of 1933. Again, we see men who are homeless, who are looking for jobs. We see free soup up here, making that line. Here, down here, we have a gentleman drinking his soup. Yeah, observe though, how are they dressed? Okay. Even with no jobs and maybe being homeless, they're still in suits, still have their hats. The Great Depression happened really, really fast. So a lot of people had jobs at the beginning, and then all of a sudden they didn't have jobs anymore. Kind of remind you of our own pandemic. Okay, as we went into 2020 and we went into lockdown, and lockdown continued, a lot of people lost their jobs too. And it's one big transition after another. Okay, so we can kind of see a little bit of correlations between 1930 and maybe our own situation that we're currently going towards. Okay, all right, let's see one more picture. Yes. Okay, as we observe this picture, I want you to notice a couple of things. Okay, so if we go back to our pictures here and we observe the people up here, okay, observe maybe color of skin. Okay, if we're looking at race, observe gender as well. Do I need to move myself? There we go. Observe gender. Okay, do we see any children in there? Do we see any women in there? I'm sure women and children are hungry at this time too. So I'm wondering, where are they? Where's their soup kitchen? Why is it just men? I'm not sure. I don't have an answer to you, but I wanted you to observe that too. And if we look at our next picture, again, if we're looking at race, okay, we see that it's mostly African Americans, dark complexion, okay. And this one we do see women, okay, maybe even a child there. We do see women. We see another bread line. But of course, in this one, Dorothea found it kind of humorous, or it's kind of like a juxtaposition where in the background we see this poster where, hey, there's no way like the American way. And we see, hey, we have a happy Caucasian family with the little dog. We're looking super, super happy. We have the world's highest standard of living. Yes. Um, are we really? You know, the juxtaposition again. This is the American way. Breadlines, we have the highest standard of living. So again, it's kind of a juxtaposition there. Okay. Migrant Mother, her second biggest iconic picture, and this is the picture that she actually gets known for a lot. Migrant Mother, this is the title of this picture. We can see this lady right over here. And I want you to observe our female here. We have our lady. She's kind of pensive, holding, thinking. She looks like she's hungry. She's very thin. How many children do you see? Okay, do you see 2? Do you see 3? Okay, because technically there's 3 children in there. Okay, we see a little boy, well, we see one here, we see one here. And if you don't spot it, there's a little baby in her arms as well. So she's holding on to 3 children right off the bat. We can see the wrinkles in her face. Her face is kind of furrowed, where she's thinking, contemplating. Great depiction of that time period. Okay, so let's talk about this. The image of a worn, weather-beaten woman, a look of desperation on her face, 2 children leaning on her shoulder, and an infant baby in her lap. This became the photographic icon of the Great Depression in America. Okay. As Lange was finishing one of her photographic assignments, she decided to go home. She was driving home. She was driving in the rain, actually. So as she was driving home, she sees this sign kind of right next door on the road. She sees a sign where it was pea picking, peas, like those little green peas. And so she saw this camp and she was like, okay, maybe I should go home. Maybe I should go. No, I need to take pictures. No, I should go home. But she finally decides, okay, it's raining and I'm going to hate myself if I don't go in and take pictures. And so she turned around, she went into the camp and she was immediately drawn to this woman. She took only a series of 6 pictures. 6. She took 6 pictures, and that was it. She went in, it was still raining. She took the 6 pictures and then she went home and she knew it. She automatically knew it. Lange knew that she had captured the image of the Great Depression. The woman was a mother of 7, so we only see 3 here, but she was a mother of 7. She was on the brink of starvation. With that photograph, Lange achieved what she was set out to do for the Resettlement Association, to register the thing about those people that were more important than how poor they were. So not only did she want to show how poor people were and how poverty was affecting the American life, but she wanted also that she wanted her pictures to show the strength and pride of the American spirit. Okay. And so this was the great picture to go ahead and capture that. Okay. Awesome. I remember seeing this particular picture in my history book. Amazing. Now let's turn it around. Okay. So Lange comes, takes his pictures, goes away, prints these out, becomes iconic. This picture becomes iconic. How would you feel if you were this lady, though? What if you were the mother of 7 and someone's coming to take pictures of you and all of a sudden you're famous, but you don't know it? How would you feel? Let's talk about it. So, this lady, again, mother of 7, migrant mother, she actually was not found again till about 40 years later. Okay, so later on in life, they did find her. They found her family. They asked her a couple of questions, and let's learn about this. Her last name was Thompson, and so they found their family. They found the children that were actually taken pictures of. According to Thompson's son, Lange got some details of the story wrong. So when Lange goes back and she prints this picture, it gets printed into newspapers and she talks about this. She talks about how she went and took pictures of this lady and asked her a couple of questions. She said that she was a pea farmer, and actually she was not a pea farmer. Yeah, so some of the details were a little bit off, okay? Lang got some details of the story wrong, but the impact of the picture was based on the image showing strength and need of migrant workers. The morning after Lang visited the camp, she printed the photograph, and then again, it went out. It printed, went out in the newspaper. It was shocking. It was shocking for other people to see. Um, just how bad and how um, how people were starving. Photographs were shocking. It was unconscionable that workers who put food on American tables could not feed themselves. Spurred by action, the picture that revealed not the economic cost, but the human consequence of poverty, the federal government promptly sent 20,000 pounds of food to the California migrant workers. So Lane goes, she prints the picture, it gets printed. She talks about this lady being a pea farmer wife with 7 kids. They were camping. I think she mentioned that they had sold their tires for food, and that's why they're just sitting in the car. And actually, I know it doesn't look like a car, but their truck is made into a tent. And it said in her article, it said that the family had to sell their tires for food and stuff. But it turns out that from Thompson's son, turns out that that wasn't true. This lady wasn't a pea picker. She was a farm worker, and she was jumping from farm to farm with her husband and 7 kids. They were jumping from farm to farm to go and pick whatever was available. So it wasn't just pea picking. It was lettuce, apples, oranges, whatever was available. And eh, that fact about their tires wasn't true either. Her son mentioned that because they were moving from farm to farm, that it was impossible for them to have sold their tires. Anyway, so when Lang prints this picture the next day, the federal government sends 20,000 pounds of food to California migrant workers. So they send it to that pea picking farm. Unfortunately, Thompson, this lady, and her children were not there anymore. So she didn't get anything. Okay. Lang took a picture of her. It goes iconic, people see it everywhere. And this lady gets nothing for it. She got no money out of it, she got no food out of it. And then for the next 40 years and plus, because we're still talking about her, she is seen as this migrant mother. She is seen as the icon of the Great Depression. Okay. Later on, when they asked her 40 years later if she appreciated Lang taking a picture of her, she said no. She wished that she wouldn't have ever taken pictures of her because she never got anything out of it. And she felt embarrassed. Okay. She felt embarrassed that she got captured in maybe a sad moment on a hard day. Um, and yeah, she didn't appreciate that. Okay. The photo's wider impact included influence like John Steinbeck in the writing of his novels, Grapes of Wrath. Ta-da. Almost done, guys. Last but not least, in the 1940s, Lang was awarded a very prestigious fellowship. So she's been taking pictures for about 10 years now of the Great Depression. Okay, and she finally comes up to a prestigious job, an achievement in photography, and they offer it to her, a female photographer. But she decides, you know what? After the attack on Pearl Harbor, she gave up that fellowship. And instead of going and taking this fellowship, she decided to join the War Relocation Authority, WRA, to document the forced evacuation of the Japanese Americans from the West Coast in the US. Okay. So after Pearl Harbor, she decided, hey, I'm going to go ahead and take pictures of the relocation of the Japanese Americans. Okay. So I'm pretty sure, again, history, a little bit of history. After Pearl Harbor, America thinks that we're being attacked by the Japanese. And so we decide, we make the dumb decision to take all these Japanese Americans and put them into camps. Okay, we take them away from their home, their family, their friends, and put them in camps. So she covered the internment of the Japanese Americans and their subsequent incarceration, traveling through urban and rural California to photograph families that were required to leave their homes. Okay, so she went ahead and followed these camps. Okay, and we can see this picture down here. We can see the "I am American" sign. Okay, again, do you think we could see signs like this right now, currently? Okay. Seems like we're always fighting the same battles. Lang visits several temporary assembly centers as they open. Eventually, she ended up ended up just staying at Manzanar, which is one that was relocated, or a camp that was located here in California. If you ever get the chance to read Farewell to Manzanar, which is a really great book, read it. It gives you more of an insight of what happened to the internment of Japanese Americans. Okay, so she decided to go and just follow the news. Death and legacy. Lang's health declined in the last decade of her life. Among other ailments, she suffered from what was later known or identified as post-polio syndrome. She did die of I can't even talk today. Cancer, okay, of the esophagus, October 11th, 1965, still in San Francisco at the age of 70. So she did grow old. She still grew in San Francisco, and she died of cancer. She was survived by her second husband, so she did get married again. Her two children, her two boys, three stepchildren, and lots of grandbabies and great grandbabies. Okay. Before she died, she was helping the Museum of Modern Art in New York. She was helping them curate artwork. Okay, she was helping them curate artwork based on photography, based on the Great Depression, right? Based on her work. They were going to go ahead and get, she was going to have her own installation of her photographs and everything throughout the years. Unfortunately, like many of the artists that I pick, unfortunately, she didn't get to see it. Okay. 3 months after her death, it was finally showcased. It was something that she was planning for, but unfortunately, she didn't get to see how much, or the impact that her pictures had in our history, capturing things that were happening in our history. It was important work that she was doing, and she was so, so great at it. Okay. So again, she never got to see her exhibit during her lifetime. She did pass away. And I believe that's it. That's the last of our slides. Okay. So now what I want you to do is I want you to go ahead and finish your slides. Take a picture, upload it, turn it in for credit. Friday, we will have a quiz on Dorothea and everything that we just talked about. If you haven't finished your Dorothea worksheet, okay, analyzing pictures that she had taken, make sure that you finish that as well. Okay, you do have a sketchbook prompt due by Friday. Be great to work on that as well. Okay, miss you guys. Hope to see you soon. Have a great day. Bye.